Hello.
Hello, Joel.
Hey, Ed, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. And you?
Oh, fantastic. It's after lunch, so I'm like all full of energy and
So where are you located if it's now after lunch? You're not West Coast then?
no, we are in Florida.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
The state that's always learning how to count.
Indeed.
And so you're out in California or?
No, we're in Pittsburgh. So
Oh,
we're in
you're
the
in
same time
Pittsburgh.
zone as you.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. So we're dealing with a rainy, cold day today. So
You got to come down to Florida.
I know that'll work.
So are you familiar with the format where there's no big intro? You and I just kind of hang out and talk.
Yeah. I listened to a couple of the shows to kind of get a
Mhm.
feel, and so I'm cool with that. That's great.
Nice. I like that you're a founder.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm a founder as well. We're actually, a company came out of the podcast. And so now, like about halfway, 4 months into the podcast, people were saying that they had this problem. So we created this solution just as like hey, we'll just do it as like a week project just to see how it goes. And then we just hired our 8th person. It's been 4
Nice.
months.
Nice.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So it's tough though. Like it's not easy to do the founder thing.
No, and there's these levels of where after you break over this level, now you have kind of have free sailing until you get to that next level of, and maybe that's certainly hiring your first full-time permanent employee, and then
Yes.
of course going to the whole benefits and HR and all of that. Then is another level of founder angst that you go through.
Yeah, we tend to be getting on that. I think we have the latest hire starting today, actually at like 3:00.
Mhm.
And it's like people are starting to ask about benefits and people are starting to ask about these other things where before we were just like, get someone on board who's like super culture fit and who has the great skills and like, let's just solve this tough problem together. And it's like 3 or 4 of us sitting there at a table every day. And
Mhm.
now we have like offices.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We went through this same thing, and honestly, our first couple of hires were folks that we found that could manage to get their own benefits. Either they were provided by their spouse, or they were able to go get their own private health insurance. But then once, we actually lost a hire we really wanted to have because we didn't have a full benefit set. And look, I just can't do this. I have to be at a real company. And so I turned to my wife, who was a co-founder, and said, look, we're going to have to be a real company and go get these benefits. And so, and then, she had this background so that she could come in and do all of the HR and everything. But, having we have a tech council here in Pittsburgh that we went through, and they were able to help us as a small, at the time, 4 or 5 person company. We're now 20, go get full up, 401ks and health benefits and dental and vision and all these things that, people with a real job expect.
Yeah. And it's amazing though now, because your company, you said, how old is it? 15 plus years old?
Yes.
So you didn't have like I've been looking at some of the HR softwares now. It's like your HR person's like a SaaS app. It's like there's like Gusto, and then I don't know, that name just stuck with me for some reason. Have you heard of them?
I have not. I've not
Yeah.
heard of them. I'll
I
have to
don't
go
know.
look them up.
Yeah, I was searching for like, what do you do? Like, I literally Googled what are benefits? Like, what a founder problem, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's exactly it. I mean, you get yourself into so many of these things where, well, the company I usually, because I was at 2 Fortune 500s before this.
oh
But
wow.
of course, there were entire departments to handle that sort of thing, right? You got your benefits packet, and it was this shiny, glossy packet, and it told you what your benefits were. Well, I realize now that behind all that, there's some people putting all that together, and now that has to be us, right? But you're right. Nowadays, with all of this as web-based, SaaS-based, and your employees can, if you want them to, they can work for that company and just report to you if you really want to do that. We have, we've grown through all of that. And one of the most interesting things that I found was, that as we grew and got more and more people and more things, now that starts to eat into your time about what are you going to do? What am I going to spend my time adding value? And you start to think, okay, what pieces of this do I have to be spending time on? What pieces shouldn't I be spending time on? I should trust someone else to go do. I guess as founders, we all have, this little control issue.
Well, yeah, it's weird because we're constantly we're creating new processes and then finding individuals to take them over.
Right.
And if we're sticking around in a process too long, it's a problem. So yeah, we're constantly detaching from our babies.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have to find people who are strong enough to tell me to step away.
Yep.
They've got this, that they can say, look, I know that you started this, but now I've got this piece. Trust me to take this and do the right thing with it.
Yeah. The thing I'm not letting go of right now. And it's also here, it's a dance too, because we'll sit here, you and I, we'll talk about this advice. We have a huge audience and everyone takes things differently. If you've ever written an article and posted it online, right. People get the weirdest things from what you write.
Right.
But when it's positive, it's great. So like when we're talking about this, there's also a delicate balance between how much time you need to spend raising that process and refining it and hardening it prior to letting it go.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I mean, because it can't, perfect is the enemy of good there. As you start down this path, you just have to say, look, I have other things that have to get done. So I can develop the world's best, mixture of healthcare, long-term disability, short-term, or I can just pick this package that everybody's going to be happy with and move on, and focus on, one of the biggest things that I'm sure that you folks focus on as well is culture, making sure that this is a place that people want to come to. And, as a small company, we're not going to have, a coffee barista ready to serve you and a 4-star chef, carving up the roast beef for lunch. But at the same, and down the street, there are companies that have that. And so we have to give something different. We have to say, look, we have a culture here that, we start by, people have fairly nice spacious offices and 4 monitors and things that they might not get at those other places. Whereas, they might not have the barista, but they've got a 12 by 12 office, often private, some nice space to call their own. That's amazing. Yeah. Because you don't want to leave your friends either, right? Like if you make some cool friends at work, like you don't want to. I remember some of the best projects I've had. I've built a lot of applications. So my background's actually building applications and software for companies, and then I would either get a part of it or just do a contract work. Right. So I had like an agency where we would do that, and so that's a lot of my background. Then here and there, I got actually paired off into the company, so I'd build it for them, and then like I'd join it if it starts getting legs, and yeah. But that explains why I was so bad with like the HR stuff. Right. So the best projects were the projects that like I didn't want to leave the people. Like it was just so energizing when you're around great people. And last Friday I was in Tampa, which is like an hour north of us, and I was listening to a guy named Tony Benedetto talk about how he grew his company from 0 to 175 million. Wow. And it took him 18 years. So like I believe it, right? Like, it's very believable. I don't like it when I hear, 175 million and it's 18 months, like 18 years. Like not only is that amazing, but it's like, look at that persistence. Like it's admirable. But he talked about, the whole talk was passion and culture. The thing that made all the difference, he accredits like all his success to having great people. It's absolutely the case. I mean, when people want to come in and they're excited about the next project and they're not looking to get off the project that they're on because they're like, I just want to see this thing through. I want to drive this thing to completion. I want to see it. We go out there and I want to see customers using it and giving us feedback, good or bad. And let's go make this happen with customers. We do everything we do pretty much is contract for hire. It's deliverable to projects within another company. But at the same time, these people here have an ownership piece of that. in terms of seeing it through and making the customer successful.
So you're primarily embedded systems design, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then what field have you sort of gravitated towards? Like, do you do a lot of medical projects or automation? What?
So we do a lot of what used to be called machine to machine, but now is called Internet of Things. And so we're doing a lot of machine communication. We're doing in the domains. We do a little bit of medical. We do a lot of industrial, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's industrial control. It might be sensing. It might be transportation industrial. We do some work in oil and gas, and also in retail and restaurant. And so really anywhere where there's machinery that you can add sensors to and make the machinery more efficient, is where that we've started to, we've taken the work that we used to know how to do in deep embedded and connected that to cloud. And that really led to our acquisition 2 years ago, was we were doing a lot of embedded work and a little bit of cloud work. And there was a company, Applied Visions, and their owner kind of looked at these two companies and said, oh, I've got a cloud-based company in Long Island, and here's an embedded system company in Pittsburgh. He was real excited about Pittsburgh because of the story that Pittsburgh has had over the last several years of its growth in tech. And he said, I was thinking about a Pittsburgh office, but here's a Pittsburgh company that might make a good synergistic match with my company. And so we brought those two companies together. And so now SDS and Applied Visions kind of joins forces on a number of projects where we'll do the embedded side of it. They'll do the cloud side of it, mobile, all of that.
That's amazing. So you have experience in this M&A space.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is, I mentioned the early on when we were talking earlier that this is the fourth acquisition I've been part of, kind of on the buy or sell side, 2 on the buy side, 2 on the sell side. And that's because started at a little startup out of Carnegie Mellon University that was bought. And so I got to experience the sell side there, bought by Texas Instruments. And,
ooh, that's a nice buy.
So
that's a cool buy.
Yeah, it was
right?
a large. It was a small group of 30, 40 engineers and some marketing folks building compilers for digital signal processors. And
I love it.
those folks got scooped up by Texas Instruments, who was huge into digital signal processing at the time. This was, early 90s.
So early 90s.
Yeah, mid 90s, I guess that would be, yeah.
Mid-early 90s, you would see me sitting in an office at a computer, programming some basic code. And my father was doing this to keep me busy, whether he was having me move items around in memory or showing me table. Oh, what was that? I've lost it because it's been 27 years. I'm in my early 30s now, but right. He would have me searching for things inside a disk partition. Like, it was crazy, this stuff. And he was embedded systems design. He got his experience in the Air Force, and then he came out and they invented these, he was like the number 3 hire at this company that ended up having like thousands plus people and going public, but they invented these screens that go inside golf carts. So like they had GPS units in them. Okay. There were screens. They looked like little like if you were to look at one and hold it, it felt like a tablet, but it was like in 92, 93. And they had their own GPS chips in them with signals, and they would go to the satellite and pay for the satellite time or whatever it was. But it was just unbelievable how advanced that technology was then.
Right. And nowadays, you just pull up your phone and that's the same technology. But back then, that was a large leap at the time to do all of that in that kind of technology. That probably had some DSPs in it.
So what role was your role during the first acquisition? Were you just a team member?
I was a technical lead during that acquisition, and then after joining TI, I went on the buy side because TI went on this buying binge. After buying us, our little company was called Tartan Laboratories. They were in this acquisition. They were in this acquisition phase of buying small companies in the DSP software space. And so I joined a team of folks that went around and analyzed companies for acquisition. And so I was basically doing the technical due diligence. There were all kinds of business people doing the business side of due diligence. I was doing the technical due diligence of, let's say we went and bought this company. What would we do with the technology? How would we take it and bring it in and integrate it with the technology that we currently have? And of course, the business folks don't look at that side of the integration problem. They just look at the numbers or the dollars and say, oh, they have these customers and maybe we want those customers. But at the same time, you might have 30 engineers with a small company culture, and you're going to ask them to go join a Fortune 500 culture like we just had. We had folks, walking around the office, pushing their bicycle to their cube, and then we get the manual from Texas Instruments that said, well, if you're this level of pay grade, you should have these size walls and this size chair, and you should have this computer and that monitor. And we're like, what? This is not something. Fortunately, we were 1,200 miles away from the main office, and so we had some leeway there to keep our local culture. Right, there was a large push at that time not to mess too much with local culture as we did these acquisitions. So during that time, we acquired 2 more companies, and so I got to watch those folks go through the same transition process that we had just gone through 2 years earlier, and we learned some things. I mean, I think thinking back, I should have written a memoir during that time of the pluses and minuses of how to do those kind of acquisitions.
Okay, so let's talk back. All right, you're a technical lead and you get acquired. Okay, and this happens. Companies get acquired all the time. I actually had a conversation about 2 or 3 months ago, or I won't mention the person's name, but he was a team lead, team of 40 to 60. Company got acquired by a foreign company so they could have a presence in the US in the payments space. And, they put a freeze on everything. And what happened was his talent got stripped because they were in quote unquote maintenance mode, no building new projects. Everyone's on salary, but they can't do anything. It's like you can review, you can't do anything. You can't approve new project. And so what happened was they instantly lost, a third of their staff essentially overnight from the freeze, and they were still going to get paid.
Right.
But it was just the creativity loss and the feeling of getting acquired by the bigger company and getting shut down. So you didn't experience something like that though, did you?
We didn't, because we were in, by this time, we're now into the late 90s, and this is the go-go late 90s. And I don't know if
pre-crash.
I don't know if you remember. Yes, pre-crash. So this is pre-crash, and so things are going crazy. And there's, this is at the time when TI was very focused on these kinds of processors, these kinds of tools, and really at the challenge here was to bring people from multiple companies that had multiple roadmaps before. Each of these companies, by the way, were third-party partners with the company previously, but they had their own roadmaps, their own product roadmaps about what they thought was the best thing to do next. And so my role, and one of the interesting things, little story about working for a large company, I was not allowed to put engineer on my business card, because in Texas, to put engineer on your business card, you have to be a PE.
Yeah.
And so there are no software PEs. And so we were told to make up a title. At the time, Bill Gates had just turned chief software architect. So that's what I put on my business card. And so that's what people started calling me. So I just started flying around to the different sites that we had acquired. One on the West Coast, one in Canada, here in Pittsburgh, and basically trying to herd the cats, trying to organize, what are we doing with these roadmaps? You guys have this product roadmap here. It's great, but we need to mesh it with what people are doing on the hardware side. We need to mesh it with what other people are doing on their other software side. Let's get these meetings together. And so that was the next 4 or 5 years of my life, was making sure that those pieces got aligned, and that was, that fit well with the title that I picked.
Yeah, and it wasn't as easy as slacking back and forth with each other.
No. No, I love Slack. Slack would have been a great thing to have at that time. But at least it wasn't so old company that it wasn't memos. And so, it was, we would often, once a month we would try and get together face to face, because, you're still in this phase where these people are new to you, and you're trying to bring people together and get them to trust each other. And they're all very highly experienced, high energy people.
Right.
And you don't want them to stall. You know what I mean? You don't want them to say, oh, this is taking too long, I'm just going to give up, or we're going to go do this side thing and show them when it's done.
Right.
You want to have everybody pulling together, because we had a team prior to the acquisition. Their team was, probably counted in a couple dozen. All of a sudden we have well over 100 people that we can apply to a software problem.
That's amazing.
And now we have 100 people to apply to a software problem, which is a whole nother set of organizational challenges, right?
So if you were to take one, I guess, nugget from the first transition or acquisition, when you were a technical lead and TI bought you, what was the big shiny experience that you walked away? If you were to say, I learned one thing from this part of my life, right? What advice is that?
Certainly, one of the biggest things I think is, don't try and fix things that are already working. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When, and that means that sometimes you're going to change your plans. You made this acquisition with some thought in mind about what you're going to do with this company you just acquired. It may not work out that way. You have to be really, really flexible, because quite honestly, the acquisition of my company wasn't that way. That was their first acquisition, and it was like, okay, we just hired basically 30 people. Let's have them follow our way. And we didn't get out of it as much as we could have. And the second and third acquisitions that were made, we approached it in a much different way. We said, okay, let's go there. Let's see what they have. Let's figure out what their roadmaps are. Let's figure out if we need to alter our plans to fit their roadmaps. Because, you don't always get to see the full picture during acquisition.
Right.
Due diligence is not a 100% process. So let's go see, and maybe you get to talk to the first layer of management. Let's go talk to the real working engineers and figure out what they're passionate about, and get them involved in what we're passionate about, or vice versa. Maybe we change our perspective, and that really worked well with the fourth acquisition, which is Applied Vision's acquiring SDS. Change everything that you do to work like us, because we have a different kind of set of customers. Folks that purchase cloud applications are kind of in a different ballgame than your average industrial company that has never done software before, and they're moving from a non-programmable control system, maybe something that uses PLCs or ladder logic, and they're moving to a full-up programmable. Teaching them about software, teaching them about security, teaching them about the capabilities that they could have, and incremental approach in doing those kind of things. And certainly we've got a lot of education about how to deal with larger customers. He's got a lot of education about how to deal with much smaller customers.
So it worked well.
Yeah, it certainly has.
How did you meet? How did you meet this individual?
So we actually put the company on the market, and we were introduced. And so that It wasn't the kind of thing where I ran into them at a bar somewhere or something like that. It was, we were brought together by a third party, and that,
Yeah.
That ended up working very well. And it wasn't the first introduction that was made to us. I mean, we walked away from others because the fit just wasn't there. It was about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, where we decided, you know what, the growth here was good, and we were at a 10, 12 kind of person count, head count for a long time, and quite honestly, it wasn't until after the acquisition that I realized why we, over 15 years, bumped up against 12 people and went down, bumped up against 12 people and went down, bumped up against 12 people and went down. It was me.
You take some ownership of that. Yeah, there you go. I love it. You got to.
Because I had my fingers in every project, and I was the limiting factor. So I was the limiting factor, having my fingers in every project.
I love you so much right now. Because not only did you realize that you paid the experience cost of it, right? So yeah. It's like, and then the fact that you're sharing this is just, it's amazingly genuine, and it'll keep other people from preventing the same mistake.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't until, I'd like to have said I realized the mistake and then corrected it and it wasn't until after the acquisition that I realized, wow, why are we at 20 some people now? And how can that work? Well, it's because there are projects going on here that I know what they're doing, but I don't write any of that code. When we were at 12 people, I was in every project writing code. It's fun. It's awful fun. But it does mean that now I have an engineering manager who's a certified agile coach and a certified security guy. And so he manages the day-to-day of these projects. And I can focus on things like understanding technology, things like presenting at conferences, things like talking with you, where I can learn things. Just watching the several episodes on your site, I've already learned some things, and I can spend more time doing that and growing my ability to help this place more than writing code. I realized, my wife who runs the accounting side of SDS is awesome with Excel and all of the surrounding tools, and she was able to point out to me, look, you're too expensive to write code.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be writing code. We have people that can write code, albeit better than you, but certainly less expensive than you. So you've got to stop. And so you've got to go do things like talk with customers. You have to be the guy that goes and sells our capabilities, not cold calling, which I'm no good at.
I don't think anybody's good at cold calling.
Right. But that second meeting, that meeting where a customer's like, okay, yeah, I want to talk with you guys to figure out if you're for real.
Yeah.
That's a meeting I love to do. And I used to do those. But after I got 12 people's worth of work here, I would be so consumed writing code in 4 or 5 different projects that I would stop going out and doing that new business development, that filling the pipeline that gets us from 12 to 14 to 16 to 20, which is where we're at now. So, I mean, if there's one piece of advice I would say for founders is figure out a way to get out of that. Figure out a way to take a few things that you do, even if you like doing them, and hand them off so that you can spread wider.
I noticed that at the big companies, or at least let's just say companies with like 30 people, right? Mm-hmm. The individual that's going around and speaking, right, that's going around doing these things, that's spending time with the customers, that's closing the big deals, they almost always have the craft of whatever the work is being done, because they started out by doing the work, and then they did the work so well that they attracted enough people to them that they now have to spend time away from doing the work in order just to talk to the people that want their level of quality. And that, for me, when I realized that probably in my about 7 years ago, my early 20s, mid 20s, and I said, all right, I keep building these basic apps and then finding teams and then moving on. And then if I'm going to do an agency, I have to, be able to spend time with this person writing me a 6-figure check.
Right.
And they want to know how the project's going every week. And if I wrote someone a 6-figure check, I would want the same thing.
Right.
And then they wanted me, not a project manager. Right. So I found somebody that I trusted and that had enough quality of my quality that I could sign my name to it and then, keep tabs on it. We had style guides and things like that. I'm sure you have that with your code now, but yeah. Now they've got amazing tools that even like you check it into GitHub or whatever. And it's like, if it's not the style guide, it's kicking it back out.
Yeah. Continuous integration is a wonderful thing.
It's better than standing in line to run your punch card programming.
I'm not that old, although I have run those. So
I've seen a video of someone right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate that, my career has spanned the level of technology that it has spanned. My first computer, you said you were sitting down at a basic computer. Mine was in, early high school, and that was 4K of memory. And it was, and I got a lot done in 4K of memory with BASIC, and had a great time with that and fell in love with that. And matter of fact, I still have the ad from the newsletter where I published my first advertisement for a program that I wanted to sell.
Really?
Yep. I sold one copy.
That's amazing. You got to take a picture of that, post it on LinkedIn, and then tag me in it.
I will. Yep.
I want to see that. Are you speaking at any conferences this year?
Next, actually, I'm getting on a plane this afternoon.
Okay.
I'm headed to ID TechX. This is a conference in Santa Clara. It seems like there is an IoT conference in Santa Clara pretty much every other week. And this is an interesting conference because it's a combination. It's IoT, it's also 3D design and flexible, wearable, basically, fabrics with embedded electronics in them. So it's a lot of that kind of broad kind of coverage of all the technologies. I'm speaking there on the promise and practice of industrial IoT. And I do a lot of that kind of speaking about how to apply IoT, how to get ROI out of IoT. Basically, as people are we get a lot of, I think, a lot of C-level kind of managers saying, we got to have some IoT in this product. We got to have, internet connectivity. And the mid-level, engineering kind of managers are like, well, what does that mean? Where should we go with this? And we're scared of the security aspects of this. And so we really want to be able to, what I say to those folks is start small, pick some prototype kind of project, bring someone in to help you, and let's build a piece of this. Find some low-hanging fruit. You don't have to IoT every little piece of your system, but find something, whether it's predictive maintenance or whether it's efficiency or something that you think you can measure a little better if you had continuous measurement, and go for that. I was at Fog World Congress recently, Sensors Expo, and so we kind of go back and forth between very detailed, specific conferences like Sensors Expo, which is all about just sensors, or a specific technology like fog-based processing, which is processing not at the cloud and not down at the nodes, but somewhere in the middle, which we feel very passionate about, or these broad conferences like ID TechX. This is the first time I've been to it. It should be interesting. It's a very large conference with a lot of different types of speakers there.
And then I like that when you mentioned all the different things that'll be there, the fabrics, the IoT, all that great stuff. I like that we're at a point in life right now where there can be so many advancements in so many different fields. It can't even be disseminated to all the people. Like, we can't all know what's happening. Before, I remember driving, to Tampa, right? And this is probably late 90s, I was in the car with my parents, and every other week we'd go up there to see family or something, and there'd be a new Pentium billboard, right? We've got the 3, we got the 4, we got the 5. Like, it just kept going up and up and up and up. And I was just like, wow. But that's the thing that the whole nation would be talking about. Right. But now it's like we have, for 3D printing hearts, and we've got fabrics, and I just saw a foldable LED screen the other day.
I know.
Yes.
It is amazing that, and It used to be that very much like you said, when there was an innovation made, it was made in one domain, whether it was, in industrial or automotive or whatever, and it wasn't easily transferred to another domain. Nowadays, you have a sensor, and maybe you have the ability to imprint fabric, imprint electronics in a sensor, and it can go through the washing machine, and that's great. Well, that has a lot of different kind of uses, a lot of uses that people aren't even thinking of yet. And I see so many interesting uses of those things, not just for, of course, of health and wellness with exercise clothing and that kind of stuff, but also I saw recently in one of these conferences, someone was doing it for, to help people through their rehabilitation after surgery. It would guide them, to say, you're doing this exercise correctly, you're not doing this exercise correctly. Or compliance. Are you doing the exercises at home that you said you were going to do, or do we need to send you to PT, to do the exercises guided, to get you better? Or fall detection with the elderly. I mean, I think there's so many of these things where our technology can be developed in one place and cost reduced, which is important, because that used to be the goal. That used to be the role of government and military and all of that, is to develop these advanced technologies that then you could cost reduce to consumers. But nowadays, you can get cost reduction out of other products in consumer electronics, and then use them in other fields. So it's going the other direction. We're starting to see consumer level electronics getting used in medical instead of the other way around.
And then how are you getting to these conferences? So I get a lot of people that ask me about that. Do you have a team member of yours that's helping submit you PR firm? Like, how do you get yourself out there?
So we do have a marketing firm that we work with that kind of helps me, guides me toward, which conferences might be useful based on the kind of hits we're getting on our website and these kinds of things. But generally, I do my own submissions in terms of abstracts. We have a fairly specific thing we like to talk about, which is IoT, fog-based processing, I like to talk about either a very detailed topic like MQTT and how it works, or a very high-level topic, which would be C-level, about which is what the ID TechX conference is, and that's about how do you justify the return on investment, and how do you start an IoT project? Because I think that's as I mentioned, that's a real stumbling block for a lot of companies, is they want to do something in IoT, they don't want to fail on a large project. So I say fail on a small project.
That's what I say.
Fail on 2 or 3 until you get one right.
So the next step for you would be to record these. Do you record them and post clips of you saying really cool lines on social media?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. That's one of the things that our marketing agency is saying is, okay, we're getting a lot of effort put into these slide sets and presentations and all of these things. We need to reuse this content, because that's what they're about. I'm about reusing code. They're about reusing words, right?
Yeah.
This is one opportunity, is doing these kinds of discussions with folks like Joel, where we can point people to them and say, look, we've got this cool podcast, Modern CTO. Go view it, and go view all the others too.
It's crazy. I love the podcast, but I would say 99% of the time I forget people are listening. I'm always like, Jake, we got to cut some of that out. Because we'll do real talk too. Sometimes people will share stuff, and afterwards we'll be talking. We're like, yeah, we'll probably edit that out. We've had acquisition mentions. The number of amazing blooper things that we've had to cut out are, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, definitely reusing those slide decks, or you travel with a team member?
I sometimes travel with the owner, because he likes to see where his money's being spent, but also on top of that, on top of that, wants to kind of figure out this space and figure out how best to position us, right? Sometimes another thing that we do is we send some of our team instead of me. We sent our agile, our certified agile coach, who's my engineering manager, to an agile conference. We'll send him to a security conference. We send some of our embedded engineers to Embedded Systems East. And so, I mean, that's an opportunity for people to get up and get out of the office, go represent the company, learn something new, put aside the code that you're working on for a day or two and go look at some really shiny, cool stuff, right? Come back energized about using shiny, cool stuff in my next project, And I think that's important to have people have that opportunity.
Oh, it's very important. It also helps with recruiting because people are they have the skill set. They're paying to learn from other smart people. That just takes like 80% of the people out of the equation.
Right.
It's like now we found just the people who are willing to pay to learn and improve from other smart people. And then they have the opportunity after the talks to either share and provide your people with great insight or information and perspectives, and then to build relationships for, future growth hires.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And my goal would be to basically have folks recognize us first from one of these conferences, or meet us. So the best goal would be meet us and say, oh yeah, I saw you at such and such a conference, because that's the kind of instant credibility that really drives home these folks are worth talking to. These aren't just folks that knocked on my door and said, hey, can we sell you some IoT stuff?
I love it. It's like Girl Scouts, but for IoT.
Exactly.
Yes. I'll buy some Thin Mints though.
Yeah. Nice.
Ed, we made a podcast, man.
Right. Nice.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So this has been great. I mean, I think that these kinds of discussions, I mean, like I said, I listened to 3-4 of the other podcasts, and it seems like they all go different places. I hope this one went a useful place for you. I certainly enjoyed talking.
Oh yeah. That's what it is. It's for us, for our relationship, right? And then inevitably there's always value. It's just the universe has this weird way of working where like the right person's going to hear this at the right time and it'll provide them value.
Yeah, I hope it does. I hope it does. So,
and if it does, you're on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, absolutely.
People can reach out to you on LinkedIn. Yep.
You find me on LinkedIn. You'll find my speaking events at our website, softwaredesignsolutions.com. There you can see all of the slide decks from all the conferences that I attend, and links to podcasts like this one.
Awesome. If you ever need anything from me at all, you have my contact information. Just reach out directly. Jake will be in touch about when we're going to deploy.